want to talk about the idea of letting Jesus love on the kid inside you. I was in the book of Mark in the Passion Translation, and I read this passage, Mark 10:14-16. It says, "When Jesus saw what was happening, he became indignant with his disciples and said to them, 'Let all the little children come to me and never hinder them. Don't you know that God's kingdom realm exists for such as these? Listen to the truth I speak. Whoever does not open their arms to receive God's kingdom like a teachable child will never enter it.' Then he embraced each child, and laying his hands on them, he lovingly blessed each one." It seems that whenever this passage is preached, it's a rebuke for people to understand that children are just as important to him as adults are. But what if there's a little kid inside you that's never received the message that you were important enough to Jesus? What if when Jesus says, "Whoever does not open their arms to receive God's kingdom like a teachable child," he's also saying, there's a kid inside you that I want to love and embrace. When I started to think about the idea, I could almost picture Jesus loving on each child with the hopes that his disciples would understand that their inner child was worthy of the same embrace. Then he embraced each child, and laying his hands on them, he lovingly blessed each one. So, despite the fact that I'm preaching this message myself, I have to confess that there's a part of me that cringes at the idea of embracing your inner child. My initial interpretation of this idea is that it's just worldly pop psychology gobbledygook. But when I push past the hesitation and realize that this is a concept that truly is backed by Scripture, I know it's legit. Scripture tells us we have the mind of Christ, but sometimes our mind holds us back from catching up to the revelation of Christ within us. That's why it's important to surrender to the process of the renewal of our mind, because even in embracing our inner child, we are participating in that very concept. There are ideas and misconceptions and lies that we've made agreements with in our childhood about ourselves and about God. When we receive the kingdom like a child, we are letting go of our need to explain things away and having childlike faith in what Jesus says and what he's doing. In our false maturity, we accept lies as a result of our experiences. Children don't do this. That's why Hitler knew he had the power to control a nation, because he was reaching the children. Children are more impressionable. They also, for the most part, have an innocence that keeps their imagination pure. Faith requires imagination, because there are things we cannot see. When we cut that part of ourselves off, we become jaded. A lot of times we think that becoming spiritually mature means we can't be a kid again, because life is tough and bad things happen, and you have to learn to just deal with life as it comes. Several years ago, a new young couple showed up at the church that my husband and I were members at. We talked a bit with them after the service, and they asked if we could hang out sometime on a double date or something. And I know this is going to sound strange, but at the time, I was really taken aback that they were interested in hanging out with us, a couple who was married and had children. At that point of my life, I didn't really feel like I was a fun person to hang out with. I'd just spent the past 2 years living in the trenches of toddlerdom with my first and only kid at the time. And in my insecurity, I shut myself off to the younger side of me so I could fit in with other moms and be taken seriously. Was there a point in your adult life where you shut off your younger self for whatever reason? It seems like the religious thing to do. The Pharisee does not embrace the gospel because it will reveal the facade he hides behind. In our need to protect ourselves, we put up walls, and in rejecting our inner child, we're attempting to protect ourselves from the emotions that come with being young again. Think about a time in your life as a kid when you didn't feel safe to just be a kid. Grown-ups told you you're okay when you weren't. You watched your parents care more about their work than simply being present with you in the moment and playing with you. Maybe you experience physical or emotional abuse from a caregiver or a parent. Maybe you just did not have a good time in school with the other kids. In all honesty, I never really felt fully embraced as a child, especially by my father. I recognize that it's because he had a hard childhood too and didn't know what to do. So a place I enjoy going in my mind is letting Jesus push me on a swing at a playground. The other day, I felt like I just needed to be a baby in Jesus' warm embrace. Whatever the case is, Jesus wants to meet you in those moments. When you let Jesus love on the kid inside you, it will be easier to accept and receive his love and delight. You don't have to behave for him, just be with him. After watching this, I want you to go to Mark 10:14-16 and imagine yourself as one of the children who at first was denied access to Jesus because of who you were. But then Jesus calls you to himself and openly embraces you before all the people who denied you, a little child, from accessing the love your kid heart desperately wanted. Sit with that picture today and hope this message encourages you, and God bless.